So I have no idea how this got past CNN censors, but it did. Van Jones was interviewing a panel of black voters who supported President Trump and asked them, hey, if you had to do it again, would you? And they unanimously said yes. Now, this is notable for two reasons. Number one, the media has been pushing this narrative that Trump voters are regretting their votes. And number two, it's not as if these were lifelong Republicans. In fact, for many of them, it was their first time voting for Trump. This is how this segment began.
Always a Republican.
No. Actually, I come from a family that was like super Democratic. My first time voting, I voted Democrat. I voted for Joe Biden.
What about Trump appealed to you?
Am I allowed to cuss?
Yeah, you can.
I mean, part of it is he's an asshole. I like authenticity.
You voted for Obama then you voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016, but 2020 you voted for Donald Trump. What made the change?
I began listening to someone, her name is Candace Owens, and I read her book, and it just opened my eyes to maybe he's not this person that I have been led to believe that he was.
So you voted against Trump in 2016,
yes,
but then in 2020 you voted for him?
Absolutely.
Why?
I saw how things were going during his first term, and I was pleasantly surprised, and I was pleased with what was happening. I saw the economy getting better. I saw country relations in certain countries getting better.
Yeah, I really loved how they talked about their journey to voting for President Trump because it made really clear the importance of media. Because one of them, she was exposed to new voices, new outlets, which in return gave her a new perspective on President Trump as a person and a politician. And then number two, they talked about how they lived through the entire Trump first term and they saw, hey, it's different from what we were told it was going to be. We actually see success, and that's why we're going to support the man. So I think it's really powerful because had these been lifelong Republicans, you would have expected them to be less likely to regret their votes, right? Because a lifelong partisan is going to be more likely to stick by their party no matter what. Whereas new voters, they're newer to the tent, closer to the door, so they're going to be the most likely to exit, the most likely to leave when things get tough. But when Van Jones asked them, hey, would you vote for President Trump again? They all said yes, and you just got to love the look on Anderson Cooper's face at the very end of this clip.
If you had to do it all over again, would you vote for Donald Trump again, yes or no?
Yes, I would. Now, in the future, I am not a diehard Democrat or diehard Republican. If there were a Democratic candidate who was more aligned for me, then I would vote Democrat.
If you go back in time, would you vote for Donald Trump, yes or no?
Yes.
I think I might know the answer on this next one.
She said yes. It's immediately yes. No, I'm sorry.
If you had to do it all over again, would you vote for Donald Trump, yes or no?
1,000% absolutely yes.
Keep in mind, this is after the deportations, after the tariffs. Again, I'm laughing because of Anderson Cooper's face. He's just like, what? I can't believe what I'm hearing. Maybe he's thinking what I said at the very top. How did this get past the censors? But again, if brand new Trump supporters are enthusiastically standing by their votes, I have a really hard time believing that lifelong Republicans and people who voted for President Trump 3 times are somehow regretting their votes and they're not. Like, it makes me really skeptical of the polls that the media are publishing and pushing when it comes to President Trump's approval rating. Well, when it comes to media bias, sometimes they don't just lie. Sometimes their bias shows in the stories that they refuse to cover. The only place I've seen this covered is Fox News, which wrote, former hostage thanks Trump upon release after years of detention in Kuwait. Defense contractor Tony Holden was arrested on fabricated drug charges in 2022. You'll notice not only is he black, but he's there with his wife and his children. He is a father of 6 from Memphis, Tennessee. And I think the reason the Democrats and the media aren't talking about this is because it would undercut their narrative that President Trump is a racist and that he hates black people. But here's Tony Holden on video thanking President Trump for his work in getting him freed from wrongful detention.
All right, Mr. President, President Trump, I want to thank you for what you've done for me and my family. I just mentioned to Adam that I wanted you to know, everyone on your team, everyone that have supported this effort, that you know that we greatly appreciate it. Okay, I wanted you to be able to meditate on how you affected personally lives and the difference that you've made. I'm a 60-year-old grandfather and father, so I can't put words in how excited. Give all grace and honor to God. But He used instruments, and there have been a lot of people behind the scenes who have done a great work. So So I wanted you to be able to hear that directly from me. And again, God bless you and your family.
I guarantee that had Joe Biden gotten that man freed, or Kamala Harris, that it would be all over the mainstream media. They'd be praising them for their courageous and heroic work in freeing that man, right? They would be thumping their chest, bragging about American strength and just how great the president is. Yet, when it comes to President Trump doing something that clearly needed to be done, crickets. Chirp, chirp. I mean, the fact that this man, a military contractor, was wrongfully arrested and detained in 2022 tells you that Joe Biden had at least 2 years to get him freed. Yet, President Trump was able to accomplish it in fewer than 4 months. To me, I think the mainstream media should be acknowledging President Trump's diplomacy skills, but instead, they're thoroughly ignoring the story. Other than Fox News, I've only seen this covered by Steve Cohen, who is the congressional representative for Tennessee District 9, Memphis, which is where Tony Holden is from. Now, earlier today, I saw this headline, and I kind of got the heebie-jeebies. I thought, oh no, are we turning into North Korea? The headline reads, Army plans for a potential parade on Trump's birthday, calls for 6,600 soldiers, the Associated Press learns. Now, that would be really disgusting if it were true. Like, that's something you would expect to happen in North Korea for Kim Jong-un, right? But as I read the article, it was very clear that that headline was deceptive. And we all know how the mainstream media works, right? Most people don't read past the headline. So they have to try to tilt the story. They have to try to put an angle in the headline to shape public opinion. But if you actually take the time to read it, this parade, this huge military parade, has nothing to do with President Trump's birthday. In the middle, the planning documents obtained by the Associated Press are dated April 29 and 30 and have not been publicly released. They represent the Army's most recent blueprint for its long-planned 250th anniversary festival on the National Mall and the newly added element, a large military parade that Trump has long wanted but is still being discussed. And then the sentence after that, the Army anniversary just happens to coincide with Trump's 79th birthday on June 14. So again, let's take a look at the headline. Army plans for a potential parade on Trump's birthday. It makes it sound like Trump wants a military parade to celebrate his 79th birthday, something that they would do in a dictatorship like North Korea, right? The media is trying to push that narrative, yet I think, personally, that headline is misleading. What do you think? Let me know down in the comments below. Well, speaking of the mainstream media, another one bites the dust. In case you haven't heard already, as of this morning, NPR, thanks to President Trump, will no longer be receiving taxpayer dollars. Now, in case you're not convinced that defunding NPR is a great thing, here is its CEO, Catherine Maher, saying that the #1 challenge to NPR, again, which used to be funded by taxpayers, is the First Amendment. Free speech is their #1 challenge.
The #1 challenge here that we see and is, of course, the First Amendment in the United States is a fairly robust protection of rights. And that is a protection of rights both for platforms, which I actually think is very important, that platforms have those rights to be able to regulate what kind of content they want on their sites. But it also means that it is a little bit tricky to really address some of the real challenges of where does bad information come from and sort of the influence peddlers who have made a real market economy around it.
I just love how she fails to distinguish the difference between publishers and platforms, because there really is a big difference there, but that's a topic for another video. In today's video, I would like to acknowledge Kevin Combe, UMMC Car, G-Ren, JazzDude29, Tesla Addict, Kathleen, Deformed Coffee, and Rayos as the members of today's Governor's Club. These are people who have given super thanks or tips to the channel. I really appreciate it, and I'm so glad that you enjoy the videos. Last but not least, there's been a lot of talk about the economy contracting, right? The GDP was negative for the first time since 2022, which I already sort of debunked that, or at least added context to those numbers. Well, today we got April's job numbers, and in addition to exceeding expectations, the numbers show that despite the media narrative and hype, the economy is in pretty good shape.
All right, breaking moments ago, the April jobs report just released showing steady gains amid some economic uncertainty. I want to bring in CNN's Matt Egan, who joins me now with more. All right, what are we seeing in the numbers? What is the context here?
Yeah, Omar, we were bracing for a slowdown in the jobs market. We did not get that. We got steady hiring. This jobs market is just relentless. Let me run you through the key numbers.
Yeah, let's do it.
177,000 jobs were added in the month of April. That easily beat forecasts for 135,000. So not even close there. The unemployment rate stayed low. It stayed at 4.2%. When we look at where the jobs are right now, we're seeing solid gains in a number of places. Accommodation and food services, right? Restaurants, hotels, hospitals, healthcare, private education, all of them adding jobs. One place where we saw a loss of jobs again was the federal government as the DOGE cuts to the workforce continue. But still, when we really zoom out here, this jobs market has been solid, right? I mean, 177,000 jobs. That, when we look at the trend, look at this. We saw that March was actually significantly revised lower to 185,000 jobs added. That's down from the original report. So you can see that there really isn't all that much of a change here. And these are still very solid numbers. Now, this is a big contrast to what's shown up in the surveys, right? We've seen so much gloom and doom from consumers, small business owners, CEOs. There's all of these.
Personally, I think the doom and gloom is largely because of the narrative and the hype that the media is building, right? It's almost this social contagion, just the perception of the economy and what the tariffs and President Trump are going to do to the greater economy. But what's really notable is that they acknowledged that there aren't new jobs being added to the federal government. In fact, they're being cut. So the fact that we exceeded expectations despite all the cuts happening to the federal government, I think that's great news, and it shows the strength and the resilience of the private sector. I mean, if you took a look at the GDP numbers, which were negative, that's undeniable, but the context, part of it at least, was that we reduced our federal spending, which shows, again, the private sector is going strong. If we take a look at the jobs report and compare it to the entire year, President Trump is actually overperforming most of Biden's term. Now, the reason I put November and December 2024 in those red boxes is because those always exceed the averages for the rest of the year, because stores are hiring part-time workers for those holiday shoppers, part-time jobs, right? So if you take away those outliers, then April 2025, which factors in the tariffs and all this so-called uncertainty, this last month outperforms basically Joe Biden's entire last year in office. Now, the only other big outlier is September 2024, but September is always higher than the rest of the year, usually because of back to school. Education, state jobs are just through the roof at that point. Now, that 240 for September 2024 is actually lower than the 250 in September 2023, and that's just year to year, an easy comparison to show the slowdown as Joe Biden's term went on. Now, this is according to Bloomberg as well as JP Morgan. Again, September 2024, which was the other outlier, aside from November and December, which were seasonal holiday jobs. You'll notice exactly what I said. Education, health services through the roof. Those were the number one cause of jobs, and then federal, state, and local government jobs were number three. If you add those up and take those away, then the September outlier is just completely out of the mix. But as always, all of that is just my analysis and commentary. That's what's going on in the world of politics from my point of view, and I would love to hear from you. So again, the question of the day, going back to the Associated Press, Army plans for a potential parade on Trump's birthday call for 6,600 soldiers. 10 being truth, like just as honest as you can get, and 0 being the fakest of fake news. How would you rank that headline, considering what the context actually is? I think they buried the lead. I would have to give that a solid 2. I think it is pretty close to fake news. Technically, it's accurate, but I think they obviously misrepresented. I would love to know how you would rank that. If you haven't already, please be sure to give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. I know it's a simple thing to ask, but it really does help me reach more viewers like you in the algorithm. Be sure to smash that subscribe button and to check out one of these videos.